decided to read a business/productivity book called The 4-Hour Workweek. The first 50 pages are free online. Just write to 4hourworkweek.com and you just need to insert your email and you'll get the link to the first 50 pages. So yeah, so I already started recording this, but it crashed. My computer crashed, so I think I'm gonna continue where I left off. It's on page 11 of part 2 of the first 50 pages, and it's called it's a sea dodging bullets. So yeah, let's get started. Fear setting and escaping paralysis. I hope you guys like this. Many a false step was made by standing still. Fortune cookie. Named Must Your Fear Be Before Banishing You Can. Yoda from Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back. I'm just going to increase the font. Okay. Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. 20 feet and closing. Run, run. Hans didn't speak Portuguese, but the meaning was clear enough. Holy ass. His sneakers gripped firmly on the jagged rock, and he drove his chest forward toward 3,000 feet of nothing. He held his breath on the final step, and the panic drove him to near unconsciousness. His vision blurred at the edges, closing to a single pinpoint of light, and then he floated. The all-consuming celestial blue of the horizon hit his visual field in an instant after he realized that the thermal updraft had caught him and the wings of the paraglider. Of the horizon. Had caught him and the wings of the paraglider. Fear was behind him on the mountain dome, and thousands of feet above, there were splendid green rainforests and pristine white beaches of Copacabana. Hans, killing had seen the light. That was Sunday. On Monday, Hans returned to his law office in the Central City, Los Angeles, posh corporate haven, and promptly handed in his 3-week notice. For nearly 5 years, he had faced his alarm. With the same dread, I have to do this for another 40 to 45 years. He had once slept under his desk in the office after a punishing half-done project, only to wake up and continue on it the next morning. That same morning, he had made himself a promise to write I sent him out of here. Strike number 3 came the day before he left for his Brazilian vacation. We all make these promises to ourselves, and Hans had done it before us all, but things were now somehow different. He was different. He had realized something while arcing in slow circles toward the earth. Risks weren't that scary once you took them. His colleagues told him what he expected to hear. He was throwing it all away. He was an attorney on his way to the top. What the hell did he want? Hans didn't know exactly what he wanted, but he had tasted it. On the other hand, he didn't know what bored him to tears, and he was done with it. No more pleasant days as the living dead, no more happiness of the water, providing a zen-like setting for a message he knows is true. It's not given up to put your current path on the indefinite pause. He could pick up his long career exactly where he left off if he wanted to, but that is the furthest thing from his mind. As they paddle back to shore after an awesome session, his clients get a hold of themselves and regain their composure. They set foot on shore, and reality sinks its fangs in. I would, but I can't really throw it all away. He has to laugh. The power of pessimism defining the nightmare. Action may not always bring happiness, but there is no happiness without action. Benjamin Disraeli, former British Prime Minister. To do or not to do, to try or not to try. Most people vote no, whether they consider themselves brave or not. Uncertainty and the prospect of failure can be very scary noises in the shadows. Most people would choose unhappiness over uncertainty. For years I set goals, made resolutions to change direction, and nothing came of either. I was just as insecure and scared as the rest of the world. The simple solution came to me accidentally 4 years ago. At that time, I had more money than I knew what to do with. I was making 70k or so per month, and I was completely miserable, worse than ever. I had no time and was working myself to death. I had started my own company only to realize it would be nearly impossible to sell. Oops, I felt trapped and stupid at the same time. I should be able to figure this out, I thought. Why am I such an idiot? Why can't I make this work? Buckle up and stop being such a insert expletive. What's wrong with me? The truth was, nothing was wrong with me. I had outreached my limit. I had reached the limit of my business model at the time. It was in the driver. It was the vehicle. Critical mistakes in its infancy would never let me tell it. I could hire magic elves and connect my brain to a supercomputer. It didn't matter. My little baby had some serious birth defects. The question then became, how do I free myself from this Frankenstein things will not improve by themselves. If you're kidding yourself, it is time to stop and plan for a jump. Barring any James Dean ending, your life is going to be long. 9 to 5. 9 to 5 for your working lifetime of 40 to 50 years is a long ass time if the rescue doesn't come. About 500 months of solid work. How many do you have to go? It's probably time to cut your losses. Oh, my bad. Oh. Someone called the maturity. You have comfort, you don't have luxury. And don't tell me that money plays a part. The luxury I advocate has nothing to do with the money. It cannot be bought. It is the reward of those who have no fear of discomfort. Jean Cocteau, French poet, novelist, boxing manager, and filmmaker, whose collaborations were the inspiration for the term surrealism. Sometimes timing is perfect. There are hundreds of cars circling a parking lot and someone pulls out of a spot 10 feet from the entrance. Just as you reach his or her bumper, another Christmas miracle. Other times the timing can be better. The phone rings. I guess it's okay to put this in video, right? The phone rings during sex and seems to ring for a half hour. The UPS guy shows up 10 minutes later. By timing, can spoil the fun. Jean-Marc Haché landed in West Africa as a volunteer with high hopes of lending a helping hand. In that sense, his timing was great. He arrived in Ghana in the early 1980s, in the middle of a coup d'etat at the peak of hyperinflation, and just in time for the worst drought in the decade. For these same reasons, some people would consider his timing quite poor from a more selfish survival standpoint. He had also missed the memo. The national menu had changed, and they were out of luxuries like bread and clean water. He would be surviving for 4 months on a slush-like concoction of cornmeal and spinach, not what most of us would order at the movie theater. Well, I can survive. Jean-Marc had passed the point of no return, but it didn't matter. After 2 weeks of adjusting to the breakfast, lunch, and dinner, he had no desire to escape. The most basic of foods and good friends proved to be the only real necessity. And what would seem like a disaster from the outside was the most life-affirming epiphany he'd ever experienced. The worst really wasn't that bad. To enjoy life, you don't need fancy nonsense, but you do need to control your If you don't pursue those things that excite you, where will I be in 1 year, 5 years, and 10 years? How will you feel having allowed circumstance to impose itself upon you? And having allowed 10 more years of your finite life to pass doing what you know will not fulfill